everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live this month. Our topic is elevating employee wellness through managers. And there are no better people to have on our show to talk about this than the wonderful Pete Seljevold, who is the program administrator for Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota Worksite Wellness Initiative. He has been with BCBSND for 14 years, and his goal and their goal as a team is to create healthier work sites across the state of North Dakota. Welcome, Pete. Pete has something very special to show, which are his hands. Let's see them. Yep. Pete was stung by a hornet, maybe multiple hornets last night. So he's got a puffy hand. Reminder to everybody who is coming on, welcome. Please share where you are coming from and perhaps share if you've been stung by a hornet recently. We also have Heather Ostrowski. She is the organization development specialist with Gate City. And she's been with Gate City for 5 years now. And she is the one who creates and delivers the development programs for the employees and for the leaders at Gate City. Heather, welcome.
Thanks, Laura.
Nice to have you. So with that, the theme again is this whole idea of employee wellness month, celebrating employee wellness, celebrating the promise behind it. And nice to see that looks like we've got somebody coming in here from West Hills. So California, we got somebody coming in from Clearbrook, Minnesota. Welcome, Tanya. Please keep those coming as you're coming in. And again, as a reminder to our listeners, please be sure to share your comments and your questions. And Heather are both prepared to answer these as we go along. We also have Jennifer coming in from Newtown, Pennsylvania. Welcome. So glad to see you all. Okay, so it's Employee Wellness Month, and we still hear about how workplace wellness doesn't work. Oh, and it looks like we've got somebody coming in from no place else but the wonderful Jessica is coming in from Fargo, North Dakota. One of my favorite cities. So we hear about how workplace wellness isn't working. And but I want to hear from each of you about what gives you hope that it can work, and particularly if we lean into the power of engaging managers. And Heather, I'm actually going to start with you.
Yeah. Well, being here on this session gives me hope, Laura, seeing everybody that's tuning in to learn more about what they can do. That gives me hope. We're having conversations like this all the time lately, and I think that's incredibly powerful and positive.
Great. So just the fact that we're having conversations, acknowledging, hey, it's not working, perhaps some of the strategies we've been using, but there are some ways that we can get it to work, particularly in the way that we're going to be talking about it today, driving well-being through those managers. Pete, how about you?
Yeah, what gives me hope, I've been in the health and wellness field for, 35 plus years now. And it's really fun to see the interest is remaining high, at least around here, for worksite wellness programs and how organizations can create healthier work sites. So when we go and talk about some of the solutions that we have, Elevate, which we'll be talking about soon, the comment we get a lot is, boy, this is exactly what we're looking for. The timing is perfect. So there seems to be this increased awareness that employers need to be doing something to address well-being in their organization. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, the fact that there even is the understanding that well-being at work really does matter. And I think that we've come collectively, we've come far along enough on our journey to recognize that just having these standalone wellness programs isn't going to do it. We got to go deeper than that. So Pete, I'm going to now have you share a little bit about the story behind Elevate. And as you're talking about this, can you talk a little bit about even what Elevate is and how this is different from some of the other wellness offerings that are out there?
Yeah, be happy to. So really, the Elevate program is based on the work that we've been doing with you, Laura. We've had, our wellness team has had a long-standing relationship with Laura over the last probably 7 or 8 years. And we had a leadership change in our organization in right around 2020. And we've always had great support for well-being here at Blue Cross, but we really kind of asked the incoming CEO if he wanted to make well-being kind of part of his platform or one thing he wanted to emphasize. And it took him about 2 seconds, and he was like, I'm all in. So we actually had all of our leaders go through your Manager on the Move training. We have about 165 leaders here at Blue Cross of North Dakota, anything from a team lead all the way up to the CEO and everything in between. And we were scheduled to do one of your workshops, Laura, and then the pandemic hit. So we kind of had to switch gears. And we still wanted to do this, so we switched to some virtual sessions and spread it out over the course of almost a year. And actually, in some ways, that was better because it kept the conversation going for a longer period of time. And we had 100% compliance of our leaders going through that training. And as we were doing this, we were doing some pre and post kind of internal well-being surveys just to kind of gauge where people were at. And like many organizations, we were struggling with a lot of the common things, mental health issues, depression, those types of things. So we knew we had to do something. And the Manager on the Move program really showed some significant results here, both in levels of well-being in our leaders as well as all employees, and how supported people felt about their organization on their well-being journey. So we said, we're onto something here. We need to bring this out to our customers and others in the state of North Dakota. So we worked with Laura and her team for about a year and really did a deep dive. How can we make this work? How can we, create the impact that it had in our organization? So we came up with a format of some videos that Laura produced that kind of tee up the conversation, and then our wellness team leads the activities and discussions. And we've been doing this for a little over a year now, and it's just been a lot of fun to do. And we're starting to see some good results and getting some good feedback from the organizations that are taking part. So the Elevate program, I like to really call it kind of a leadership meets well-being program. It's just as much about leadership as it is about well-being. And it's kind of getting leaders to look at their leadership style a little bit differently and looking at through the lens of well-being.
One of the things, my favorite kind of things that came out of Managers on the Move was that one of the participants shared about how, honestly, before Managers on the Move, I had never thought about incorporating well-being into my leadership style. Now, having gone through Managers on the Move, I can't imagine not doing so. So really seeing that change in managers understanding that it's not just about talking up the standalone wellness offerings that are available, but it's really about changing the way the work gets done, which entails leading in a different way and really starting to incorporate well-being into one's leadership style. So Pete, one of the things that we did, and again, to clarify, Elevate is really the productized Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota's version of Managers on the Move. Mm-hmm. And that is being delivered by you and your team to the customers that you serve, one of them being Gate City here. So, you all identified the organizations that you wanted to work with first to test this out. And Heather, so you were one of the early guinea pigs. You and the other managers and leaders at Gate City. So why don't you walk us through a little bit, Heather, about what that experience was like for you all when you went through Elevate?
Sure. Well, we were just thrilled having the relationship that we've had for so long with Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota. When Pete approached us and said, hey, we've got this program, he talked about his CEO taking 2 seconds to say yes and support to a program like this. Well, Pete, our current CEO and president, Kevin Hansen, it took him 1 second. So the support was there from the start. The relationship had already been there. And so we had no doubt that the quality of this program and the timing of this program was exactly what we were looking for. And so it was a very easy yes for us. And Pete and his team certainly delivered amazing content that we talk about still every day. And this was last year that they delivered this, early last year. So.
And, one of the things that we've talked a lot about, Pete and Heather, is just about how do we know that it's making a difference? And so we have our surveys that show things like, for example, Pete, one of the things that we saw coming out of when we implemented Managers on the Move for all of your leaders and managers was that not only did the participating managers and leaders report higher levels of well-being, but also it created a positive trickle-down effect so that employees were also reporting higher levels of well-being. But there was also a greater sense of feeling like, oh, my organization actually really cares about me. But Heather, I was really struck by the story that you shared about one of the participating managers who went through Elevate. Again, Elevate being led by Pete and the wellness team at Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota. Can you share a little bit about that story with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm happy to. We had a team member who, shortly after attending Elevate, experienced something within her family that was very difficult. And she remembered Elevate, actually, one of the last things that Pete and the team and Laura, what you've created, is to encourage people to open up and share difficult parts of their lives with their team. And so that stuck with her. And so unfortunately, she did experience a difficult part of her life where she had to help her husband bury his brother who had lost his battle with depression. And this leader, I know before Elevate, she wouldn't have felt so compelled to share why she was out of office, but she did. She wrote an email to her team explaining what she was going through while she was out of office. And for her, what happened was just this tremendous outpouring of people who shared that they had similar situations and experiences. And this team member just felt so compelled to make sure everyone knew as a result of that they're not alone. And what happened beyond that, so she reached out to her team, but then because of this tremendous result of being vulnerable and reaching out, she also reached out to her fellow peers, the other leaders at Gate City Bank, and she encouraged them. She told them how powerful it was that she shared this story, that it was the best decision she'd ever made. She spoke of the impact of opening the door to having that kind of tough conversation. And then she reminded her fellow leaders that they don't have to go through something that difficult to be open and vulnerable, but sometimes it's just the small things that can open a door that we maybe never knew that was closed, but can help us move forward in a really positive way. Without Elevate and without that encouragement of sharing difficult times with your team, that trickle effect, it wouldn't have happened. And it was so powerful, and it spread throughout our entire bank.
And I think that really demonstrates just how much managers, whether or not well-being is part of your job description, if you're a manager or a team leader, you are in fact uniquely positioned within the organization to really spark a middle out movement of well-being. We talk so often about wellness is something that's either top down, it starts with the top leaders. And of course, we need them to set the tone, allocate resources, just as you both talked about, your CEO saying, I'm all in. We need that. But in terms of it really happening on a day in and day out basis, we know that the manager is really that key permission giver, and that they can really lean into their team and be the leader for their team. They can also lean out and really inspire their peers. And they can even lean up and really encourage the top leaders as well. So Heather, why don't you talk a little bit about how, and Pete, maybe you can add on, this idea of a middle out movement. How has that grown at Gate City?
Yeah, well, it's been really exciting. At Gate City Bank, we have always been very proactive in trying to, figure out what will support our team members in the best way possible. And a lot of those initiatives come from the HR team. But what has happened as a result of Elevate is this has absolutely moved outside of our HR team and into the hands of every single leader. Even May was Mental Health Month, and so we share ideas, different steps that people can take to be aware of our benefits and our resources. And we've seen our leaders really go beyond anything that we've delivered and make it their own, have their own conversations with their teams, share how they might be using benefits. I think what they have seen as leaders, just because they're using maybe the Calm app or our gratitude journal we were gifted, they didn't necessarily tell their teams that they were doing things like that. And so now they are. And I think it's crucial to have these fun, light conversations about box breathing and what are we grateful for today, and 2-word check-ins at the beginning of meetings. That makes it so much easier when we're having conversations like that casually and throughout the day. And my hope is that it maybe will eliminate some of the more difficult conversations, because we're just keeping things top of mind and keeping that positive well-being story going.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the same things, not only that you are, Heather, at Gate City, and the other customers we're delivering to as well. They're just starting to do things a little bit differently, and they're realizing, a lot of the leaders are just starting to realize that, hey, I do have influence and impact on my team, not only for their job, but for their well-being as well. So a lot of the things that some of the activities that we do in Elevate, like 3 good things, a very simple gratitude exercise. A lot of our leaders said, I tried that with my team and it was great. The meeting took on a whole different flavor, just went in a different direction by starting out with something as simple as, what are 3 good things that happened to you in the last 24 hours? So little things like that. And we're also seeing our leaders, it takes some authenticity, it takes some vulnerability, and not everybody is comfortable in that role. But one leader that we had, she sent out a memo to our team and just talking about well-being and encouraging them to focus on their well-being. She got so much positive feedback from that and gained so much confidence that she actually went on the North Dakota Today show to tell her story. She was going through health struggles. So, that's the impact that it has. That conversation would have never happened before the leaders were equipped to do that.
So I think both of these stories, these angles really tie to this idea that wellness is more than an app. It takes a team. It really takes a team, and also really ties, Pete, so much to Dan Conrad's messaging coming in, really making well-being part of his legacy as a leader for the organization, and posing the 2-part question: what can we do as a community, as in a Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota community, and what can you do as a team? Because we know that when it comes to a lot of the issues that we're facing, we cannot self-care our way or yoga our way out of some of these big issues. And so there are some big issues that organizations need to be thinking about, things like overload, things like toxicity tolerated, things like perceptions of unfairness, things like unreasonable time pressure. I mean, these are, and having to do more with less. These are some big organizational problems that all organizations to a certain extent are struggling with. But we need to begin with the conversation of looking, not just focusing on the fish, but looking at the water, and then thinking about, okay, well, given all that and naming that, now what can we do as a team? Something that we see over and over again in the work that you all are doing. So a quick reminder to the listeners, please share your questions with our 2 wonderful On the Boots on the ground, boots on the ground people, Heather and Pete here, who have been really making a difference in the well-being of the people that they serve within the organization, but now even across the state, again, through their managers. So I want to talk a little bit now, while we're waiting for any questions or comments to come in. Let's talk about barriers. And I think one of the biggest barriers that I see over and over again is that how do you get those managers to even show up in the first place? We work so hard to build these programs, including programs for managers, only to have the same damn 7 people show up every time. And same holds true for those managers. So what do we need to be doing so that they actually show up? And Heather, maybe you want to start this off.
Yeah, it's simple. You make it mandatory. But there were only 2, maybe 3 people who could not attend last year, and they couldn't wait to get their hands on the materials. They heard everyone else talking about it, and there was certainly a buzz about this Elevate program that they unfortunately had to miss. The rest of our leaders were there in attendance. We're having Pete come back this fall to meet our new leaders and those few that couldn't make it last year. But I think making it mandatory and making it such a positive program that, again, Laura, you've created and Pete and his team carry out, because it's so good, we're talking about it. And if you missed out, you really missed out on that. And that's kind of a fun feeling to know that people are like, wait, what did I miss? And how do I get my hands on this information? So I think making it mandatory is really key. Everyone was so grateful for the opportunity to be together. They actually were in the same room together, which isn't easy to do. But the conversation that took place was just so incredibly valuable. It was worth every second of their time.
So interesting about making it mandatory. I mean, leadership development typically is mandatory. There are core programs that most organizations have in place that you must go through as a manager. So why not make this mandatory as well? Often if we make it so that it's not mandatory, people feel like, oh, well, I don't really have to be there and I'm too busy, so I'm going to do other things. But I love that you also talk about how important it is to also make it a positive experience. It's not enough to just make it mandatory. It also has to be a positive experience. Pete, your thoughts on?
Yeah, I would agree. You've all heard the term, if it's important, it gets measured, and if it's measured, it's important. So we actually put it on our corporate scorecard as a metric that all of our leaders had to go through Managers on the Move. And it really was a positive experience. And then the other thing, you need to get the most senior leadership on board with the idea and get them advocating for it. That could be your CEO, it could be a department head, whoever it is, but the most senior leaders to be on board with the idea and talk positively about it goes a long, long way as well. Yeah. So, if they're poo-pooing it, what's the attitude of everybody else? If they're hyping it up and getting people involved, that goes a long way. Yep.
So to all our listeners, one thing I want to share with you is, first of all, if you are wanting an easy way to bring this program to your managers or the managers that you serve, I do, in fact, have a course on LinkedIn Learning that, AJ, if you could put that in, or called Managers as Multipliers of Wellbeing. And that is a 38-minute version of this program that you can certainly bring to all of your managers and leaders. And then secondly, we have a follow-up 12 weekly nudges, which is things that kind of to keep the momentum going over time. So you can also have your managers sign up for that as well. And AJ is going to put that in the chat as well. Let's talk a little bit about, how you all are both are keeping this going over time, because again, that's a really key part of this. A lot of times we do these programs, there's lots of excitement at the time, but then how do we actually keep it going? And Pete, why don't you kick us off on that one?
Yeah, a couple ways that we're keeping it going, particularly in-house here at Blue Cross, is Since all of our leaders have gone through this training, we're offering quarterly sessions of the Elevate training. So any new leader that comes on board, either new to the organization or new to a leadership role, has 1 year to go through that training. And we offer them several times a year, so that's usually not an issue. And that is keeping the momentum going. And then with our Elevate training, now that we've had about 100 of these sessions under our belt now in the last year or so, and close to 600 managers from across the region go through that. They've been asking for more information. So we're in the process right now of developing some digital content for them to kind of like how you do, Laura, with your weekly nudges. Here's a topic, here's an activity you can do with your team, here's some resources for it. And it just keeps it top of mind. We've all been to great conferences and heard great speakers in our life, and we're inspired, and then it just kind of, time goes on and we forget about it. So we want to keep that momentum going. And those are the things that we're doing to try to keep it top of mind for people that have gone through the program.
And Heather, you want to share a little bit about how you all have kept the movement going?
Yeah, well, just recently, May was Mental Health Month, and we devoted one of those weeks to focusing on the great things that Elevate brought to us. We wanted to remind our team members of some of those tools. One of their favorite tools is the 5-3-1, which is the 5 deep breaths, 3 things to be grateful for, and 1 random act of kindness. So we just reminded them, keep those conversations going. Here were some great questions. Talk to your team about it. So give them different ways to reignite or remember some of those valuable things about Elevate. And yes, we're having Pete come back in, Pete and his team, in the fall to do another course for us and keep our new leaders engaged with it as well.
I think one of also the key things to really engage those leaders is our well-known KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid. You just got to give really, really simple calls to action. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces of magic of this program is that the calls to action are very simple. And often, I'm sure you all heard people say, oh, I can do that. But the 3 key calls to action are to do, speak, and create. You got to model it. You got to talk about well-being, and you got to create some team-based systems. That's it. And you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to come up with all these ideas yourself. They're all there. It's just a matter of implementing them. Pete, do you want to speak a little bit to keeping it simple and how that has helped with your movement?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we try to keep it simple as possible, and a lot of the activities and a lot of the discussions that we have really are around simple topic, and it's just asking a question or two. So, to your point, getting people to start thinking about what's one simple thing I can do, speak, and create. That's actually one of the last sessions that we have in Elevate is, hey, you've been through this. You've had some aha moments. Hopefully you've learned some things. What is one thing that you're going to start doing? What is one way you're going to start speaking about well-being? What's one simple ritual I can do with my team to create a structure for well-being to occur? And a lot of the answers are just very simple things, but it's just like, I never thought of doing that. Yeah. So, yeah.
And Heather, do you want to add any things that you all have been doing to kind of make it really simple?
One thing I think that's really important to us is that our team members know how to access the resources and benefits that we do provide. So again, over mental health, we did a scavenger hunt. Here's 4 simple things like find the crisis number, find resources that we have online. It was very simple. We had 100 team members, over 100, participate in it. We think it's so important. Sure, we could have great benefits, but if our team members don't know about them or don't know how to access them, especially in moments of real need, then I don't think we're serving them in the best way. So that's one of the things that's very important to us.
So, and I think that that's a really great way to wrap up our conversation, is it's really about getting those people who are already positioned in as influencers within the organization to just do the simple stuff and to be explicit about it, to do it loudly, if you will. That's what really makes the difference. So perhaps that's our final takeaway in our conversation today. Pete, how can people stay in touch with you? And then Heather.
Probably my LinkedIn profile is the easiest way to find me. If you can spell my last name, good for you. You can find it.
And Pete, one thing I want to add on, Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota puts on an awesome annual wellness summit that actually I guess it's the buy-in. It happens twice a year. We've got one coming up, so stay tuned for that on LinkedIn. You all are going to be posting about that next week. Heather, how can people follow your great work?
Same thing. LinkedIn.
All right.
Yep.
So we will be reconvening for our next LinkedIn Live on July 24th from 11 to 11:30 a.m. our Pacific time. Our guest will be Maria D., who is the Executive Director of Workforce Wellbeing at National Human Resources for Kaiser Permanente. And we're going to be talking about the topic of workplace well-being equity. How can we ensure that workplace well-being works for everyone and not just some? So with that, I want to thank our wonderful guests here, Pete and Heather. Thank you both so much. Thank you, of course, to AJ and Alana, the A-team, for helping to keep this whole thing going. And of course, thanks to all of our listeners, and we'll see you next month. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.